Ladies and gentle people of the eve, it's time for part 2 of daily number 657. It's just a huge number of dailies that we've done thus far, where we're learning to be a better gamer thanks to Liquid TaeJa. Ooh! Now, assuming that my sound hasn't cut out, let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to see. We have established what the way of the old was. The way of the old involved heavily relying on mines to defend at the start. The pushes even revolved around the mine in terms of how the Marines were spreading themselves out. The small skirmishes, the never-ending push. Let's see some differences highlighted here in this game by Liquid TaeJa, where we can really appreciate. First, we're going to talk about the opening, because that's what happens at the start of the game. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. I didn't mean to come back to me, but watch this. A single button press and we're back in. There's the button I meant to press. So this is Polar Night. It's one of the newer ladder maps. And again, this is played in the Acer Team Story Cup. If you want this replay, go to day9.tv. Look up episode 657, which is this one, and the replay link is right there. Boom. So this map's a little funky in that you have this very protected backdoor base as a third. You have this more exposed side base as a potential third, and you even have this forward mega exposed base as a potential third. So there are options aplenty. Oh my god, enough. Enough, I say. Alright, so we're seeing TaeJa open with the same functional opener as we saw in the last game. In the last game with Pult, it was Reaper straight into a fast starport for some Viking harassment. What we're going to see out of TaeJa is a much smaller reliance on the mines. So I even have this... the push begins and never ends. Oh no, sorry, we're the early on. Largely widow mines for defense. The barracks swell doesn't finish till 11 minutes. Notoriously early upgrades. An 11-minute medevac production. Let's begin to highlight some of these differences in this game, shall we? Single Reaper being all harassy-like. Fast Reactor from TaeJa, a move that he likes to do a lot, but again, it's kind of like a little tweak that I'm not like as obsessed about in this game, but still. It's pretty nifty. Thdoink, thdoink, Hellions. Now, I'll tell you immediately that we're going to see Hellion Banshee out of TaeJa. Now, normally when someone goes for Hellion Banshee, they go for Hellion Banshee, right? Whoa! What do I mean? Well, if you're not going for Hellion Banshee, you're doing something typical. The typical plays get 6 Hellions, and then you stop and do other valuable things with your money. When most people go for Hellion Banshee, they're building up to 10 Hellions. They're getting 2, sometimes 3 Banshees with Cloak. A stunning investment. For some reason I thought the game was zoomed in. I guess I'm crazy. Yeah, it's normally a stunning investment into Hellion Banshee. We're going to watch TaeJa do just a slight investment into Hellion Banshee. Hellion count is about to hit 4. There it is. 1 Banshee's getting produced. 2 more Hellions are going to be produced. There's 1. There's the second one. Now I want you to look at some other notable things. There's no second gas to be able to mass up Banshees and to get the Cloak upgrade. There's no extra command center yet, because of course we don't actually have the money to do it. But there's also no bunker. We're seeing TaeJa cut some defenses at the front, for now, as he's focusing a lot on Hellions, and he's even keeping his units back to do a lot of protectorate-like things. There's the bunker coming up. Still pretty defensive play out of TaeJa. Out these dudes go. And a fast third command center. Come on, fast third command center. Alright, nice. Now, what we're going to see out of good friend TaeJa is he's pulling back into the usual look of things. In fact, it's just a single Banshee. It's just a little bit slightly more aggressive of an opening, applying pressure to this third. Now, I want you to come back to here. Largely Widow Mines for defense. Why are we getting those Widow Mines again? Oh yeah, that's right, because we lose to Ling, Baneling, Roach all-ins before our big powered-up Biomine begins. In this game, a single Banshee is more than enough to thwart or just deter most early all-ins, because it two-shots Banelings, it's fast, it's versatile, it guarantees that the all-in will have to stop at some point. So, just this single Banshee provides a lot of defensive utility for TaeJa, and allows for a little bit more aggressive of the pushing. Now we're also seeing this factory get out of the way, and there's no mines coming up. Well, mines can't be as good now because they have a smaller splash radius. Or I should say a smaller effective splash radius. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. We've seen this Banshee opening. First, what we're going to do is we're going to watch this army and talk about what this army is doing, and then we're going to come back here and look at the buildings. So we're seeing that in terms of the behavior of these, even with a more aggressive Banshee in the mix, it's still just largely a harass, contain force. There's no dramatic running around and suiciding in. It's just maintaining vision, clearing out where the expansion will be soon, trying to apply a little pressure. This Banshee is not insane. In other words, many times when people go Hellion Banshee, they'll try to do huge attacks at the third, killing off the whole base with just Hellions and Banshees and murdering queens. Sometimes they'll actually try to attack bases and then suicide to kill the queens. Sometimes the Banshees and the Hellions will split up and you'll get the Banshees on the main and the Hellions at the third. They're trying to kill all the drones. Nothing like that. TaeJa's almost behaving as though he didn't build the Banshee. He's just chilling in the middle. This is a defensive tool. Why? Because we tend to use... We tend to rely on Widow Mines for defense instead of other tools like this Banshee. But look at TaeJa just doing a slight detour, a Banshee, but no cloak, just one. And that's a good enough defense. Now, if we come back into the base, we can already see some big differences going on. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here to when I said, let's focus on the attack. Let's see what's happening at home. We just have the Hellions Banshees getting produced. But when the money number of Hellions is produced, 6, total halt, no Widow Mines coming up, of course a stim. You always want stim early if you want to be doing anything at all in this game of StarCraft 2. TaeJa actually has the money to do this earlier, but is distracted by the attack. Eventually, though, we'll see TaeJa go for double barracks. His factory will become a tool to build more add-ons for these upcoming barracks. Still relatively early double engineering bay to get those upgrades started. That's actually the same across the games. That starport gets himself up a reactor, allowing it to get a whole bunch of Happy Time medevacs. 2 more barracks will go down as well, but notice how much earlier. This is around 9:30. I'm saying around 9:30, even though we're clearly past that, because TaeJa was distracted and had the funds to build at 9:30 is what you can expect to be able to begin churning out Marinis. Actually, maybe even a little earlier than that, like 9:15. We're seeing TaeJa churn out a bunch of these Marines and even get medevacs. I mean, look at this. Medevac production is about it's about a minute and a half early. In the old style that we saw with Polt, the barracks swell didn't finish until 11 minutes. We're about a minute and a half early. Now, a minute and a half might not sound like a lot, but Marines take 25 seconds to build. So that's 3 production cycles. That's 15 extra Marines that you will have out earlier. Only once these Marines pop out is TaeJa willing to split up his Hellion and Banshee business. But the unbelievably early swell of barracks is what TaeJa's going to use to stay alive. This early Banshee is another thing that TaeJa's using to stay alive. No Widow Mines were needed at any point here. Now, that's not to say that TaeJa is not going to be getting any Widow Mines in this game. It's very easy to... Actually, I'm going to pull ahead just a little bit more. What I'm going to do is... We're going to dart ahead to, like, right here. Right when these things finish. Alright, so if you just took a look at this base now, if you walked in, you'd go, oh, well, here's 5 barracks. 4 of them have reactors. We got a starport with reactor to build medevacs. We got a factory with reactor to build mines. We have double engineering bay. Sean, you're a Decepticon. You told me that it was going to be a different thing. I'm so mad! It's easy to look at this and to say, oh, it's the same thing as what Pult did last game. But there's these sometimes hard to see differences that still wind up being really, really impactful. The very swift Banshee that's able to pick things off like Banelings, up at 11 kills right now. The very early 3 barracks, allowing us to get medevacs and stimmed units out right now. There's actually no Widow Mines out at all. This is what makes it very... makes this look the same when in fact it's quite different. We're going to be relatively low on mines. We're not going to be beginning the push at 13 minutes with 11 mines like what we saw out of Pult. Let's start to look at some more subtle stuff that we're seeing in terms of the unit control from Pult. Now, in terms of unit control from TaeJa, shit, I said it backwards. Let's look at some subtle things from the unit control of TaeJa. To do this, we're going to look at Pult's game and the notes that we took from that. The push begins and then never ends starting around 13 minutes. It's just constant beat down the front. Many mines, not so many Marines, and a constant rally. There's rarely medevac pickups. There's big spreads of Marines to let the mines do the damage. There's the super small skirmishes happening constantly. Let's rewind a little bit to when the medevacs are just about getting ready to power up. God, oh, look at that. Oh, literally just about to power up. Hell yeah. So, these Marines that are out, this is actually a pretty normal-ish looking push. This is pretty standard. Actually, since the dawn of StarCraft time, people have been really doing this exact push. And you apply pressure before Mutalisks arrive. So that way, you can always pick up and run away. Like this. So that's pretty typical. Struggles at the 3rd, also pretty typical. Okay. The question that I want to plant in your mind is how does TaeJa perform attacks with Biomine around 13 minutes? What do they look like? Here's the things I want you to look for. Packed together Marine Marauder forces. Not a constant rally. Not a constant rally to the battlefield. And lots of medevac pickups. Lots. TaeJa, by clustering his force up, causes clustering on his opponent. So even though those mines are much weaker, TaeJa can still easily deal some significant damage with them. So here's just sort of a normal push. TaeJa's taking some damage. Now here's a Hellbat that's getting made. It's a total misclick. We're never going to see a Hellbat ever again. Now if we look at this base, we see second factory is going down, and that's going to be getting a tech lab to do the usual drilling claws for the mines. It's not a very fast second factory. We're still getting all the usual upgrades. We're still getting the mines and this, that, and the other. But let's see how these pushes look from TaeJa, especially when we contrast them with a player like Pult. mines are doing their usual little spread-outy business. TaeJa rarely ever steps forward with more units than he has medevac space. He wants to be able to load up his whole army. This is not a never-ending rally. In fact, look at how defensively TaeJa has everything postured. It's almost just rallied back. Earlier on, these were even rallied right here. So TaeJa just does this constantly. In fact, if you look at the amount or where TaeJa does his pickups, he's rarely ever going to be somewhere like here with his Marines, where he couldn't use the emergency thrusters to get all the way back here, where the rest of his units are. But these little load-ups generally have the effect of causing these units to be a little more clustered. I'm actually going to show these differences beforehand. So let's go to the everyone cam. So we can see that this is like a nice spread of Zerglings. And the Banelings are a little bit spread out too, but you know, you don't really care if your Banelings are spread out in the same way that you care about your Zerglings. But then when this load up happens, see, we can see that there's a nice spread in this sense. And really what TaeJa's trying to do is to conserve Marine numbers. So we can actually look at around the same time as we examined last game, and there's not as many Widow Mines, but there's much more Marines. It's about 10 more Marines. Medevac production is virtually constant for TaeJa. He's just pumping those suckers out. TaeJa does take some damage here, because he hasn't built depots and bunkers there. He totally should have. But still, I want you to see this same theme. Like, the whole Marine force is up here. There's not a lot of spreading and skirmishing. It's just assaulting, and then emergency thrustering, and then retreating back to where the rest of his reinforcements are. The mines weren't even really involved in that last attack. So here's the big play that TaeJa's trying to do. Actually, I'll even put it up here. Harass, boost back, there we go, into kill with big army. Oops. I'm actually going to leave that up there, so it will stay on the screen for all time. TaeJa's taking some damage. Whoopsie daisies, losing a lot of workers at that front. TaeJa's macro, even though he only has like 5 barracks pumping out, still has like an insane amount of units. He's conserving. Most of the time when you watch a player like Pult or an old school biominer, the Marine count will never really get that big. Now TaeJa's not being super dumb and marching his packed units into Banelings, but again, there's not as much pre-spreading like there is in the older styles. There's some, but mainly the force stays clustered together. The old goal was to get just Marines versus Mutilings. But here TaeJa is really actually going to be able to engage Banelings in a lot of times with some really nice target firing. Things are still getting killed. None of this frontline rally business, just a nice defensive location. And in terms of tactics, TaeJa's just trying to remove additional bases. And look at this strong pullback. So, yeah. So let's see, is there going to be another push? Yeah, I mean, there's like 6 mines. There's not like 11 billion. And TaeJa's, you know, doing some stimming to kill stuff off, but I think we'll watch one more attack. Yeah, so here finally is the big army. Does this work? How do you... What's the hotkey to bring up the units lost that actually shows you what the units lost are? I thought it was Shift L. I want to show how many Marines he's lost. Does anyone know how to see how to read? I don't know. Actually, can we look at the total units lost? 70? Well, we know that 27 of those are Marines. Alright. Darn. Oh, it's one of the custom overlays before I open the thing. Oh, well, that's fine. TaeJa's doesn't even have a lot of his mines participating in the battle. Just a couple. But it's largely big-ass clusters. Just such little pre-spreading. This is about as spread out as TaeJa has been this entire game. And it's the same theme of trying to kill, like, huge, just aggressive engagements, and then lots of loading up and chrono boosting the hell out of there sort of stuff. Like here. This is one risk. If you're not paying attention, this can happen. But this is a brilliant example of the boost range that we talked about. So TaeJa was in a bind. Wasn't going to be able to win against that army. So he just boosts back. And it's about a nice distance to where he can get safely to his reinforced point. He wasn't able to boost 100% of the way there back to the reinforced point, but it was still good enough for him to get here safely. But you can kind of see that it's not like rally, go, the never-ending story, the way the old thing was. It's much more of a get into a position, and then strike, lift up, retreat. And then when you come back in for strike 2, you have more Marines. And it's this sort of constant build-up that really helps TaeJa out. So we've, in part 1, we established what the older, pre-nerf version of Biomine looked like, courtesy of Pult, who still does that style reasonably well. And here we got the chance to see that even though it's the same look once you hit the mid-game, the path that took us there involved not a lot of mines at the start, involved getting more Marines and medevacs for aggression, and even one simple Banshee. These little moves are still going to keep us alive as Terran, but are going to set us up for a different kind of aggression. And we're seeing just brilliant use of this emergency thrusters to run this whole army out constantly, building up a gigantic force of Marines. And then all we really need as Terran is 1 or 2 good mine shots to kill the Banelings, and then we just decimate everything else. When we come back, we're going to start talking about the concerns that a Terran will have about the Mutalisk flock, and we'll see how TaeJa kind of adjusts to this late game where he hasn't really been able to crush his opponent. He's been able to control but not win yet. So we'll be back in a sec to talk about that. I didn't need the screen. It wasn't really that necessary.